I am Susan, having just completed high school. My residence was with my parents, Jessica and Kevin Mittnik, in a quaint three-story home located in Maryland. My elder brother, Mark, aged 26, moved to a nearby city a few years back. Mark, who is 8 years my senior, was always the apple of my parents' eyes. Observing my parents' efforts for Mark, it was clear they spared no expense. Despite his interests being short-lived, they consistently provided him with the best, be it quality hockey gear, premium art supplies, or a custom-made skateboard. I vividly recall a Christmas when Mark, whose birthday falls a week before, was gifted an extravagant gaming computer on his 17th, one he had wanted for some time, despite the cost. On Christmas morning, I opened my gift to find only a card wishing Merry Christmas, as they explained funds had depleted. The disparity was glaring. Mark's birthdays were grandiose, while mine were barely noticed, typically getting a small cake or school supplies at best. The atmosphere took a surprising turn when, just after my graduation last week, my parents proposed an unexpected celebration. "Susan," my mom said, nervously smoothing her shirt, "you're soon to be 19, and it's significant. We want to throw you a party." Nearly spilling my coffee, I asked, "A party?" Looking unusually enthusiastic, Dad confirmed, "Yes, dear, a real family celebration." Stunned, I knew my parents' sudden change had to have an underlying reason. "Why now?" I probed, hesitant to sound doubtful. Mom, downplaying, replied about my transition to adulthood with high school graduation and soon college. Though skeptical, I slowly came around to the idea, reasoning perhaps they finally wished to acknowledge my accomplishments. Preparations seemed genuine, as Mom muttered on the phone about the cake, decorations, and guest list, with Dad busily readying the backyard. Offering to help Mom one afternoon, she startled and declined, emphasizing the element of surprise and my enjoyment. "Is Mark attending?" I queried, sensing something amiss despite Mom's assurance. Mark's habitual unresponsiveness lent suspicion to my mind. Just 3 days ahead of the celebration, I stumbled upon an unsettling conversation between my parents regarding the event. Hearing Dad's anxious tone as he reassured Mom about the party perfection and Grandma Margaret's visit, someone rarely seen from New York, intensified my curiosities about the party's true purpose, making me ponder the unusual circumstances. "Efforts are being made with Susan since you know her opinion on how we treat the children." I know, Mom sighed. "She's constantly mentioning we show favoritism towards Mark, and right now, we really can't afford to upset her. The money she provided last year is what's keeping us afloat. If she withdraws her support..." Their voices lowered, but I had already overheard enough. Suddenly, everything was clear. The surprise party, the decorations, the excitement. None of it was genuinely about me. They weren't celebrating my birthday out of care. They wanted to leave an impression on Grandma Margaret. I sat down on the top step, disappointment squeezing my chest. Grandma Margaret, unlike my parents, never fell for Mark's superficial charms and always noticed the unjust treatment I received. Whenever she visited, she'd point out these injustices, and she was wealthy, residing in a grand old house in New York. She had financially supported my parents several times before. Now, it became obvious that this party wasn't about making up for years of neglect. It was a show, an act of pretend parenting, hoping Grandma Margaret would continue providing financial help. On the morning of my birthday, I was awakened by voices outside, Mom's overly cheerful tone piercing through the open window. Peeking outside, my heart leapt. Grandma Margaret was here, stepping out of her unassuming Toyota Camry. Hurriedly dressing, I rushed downstairs and almost collided with Dad in the hallway. Grandma's face brightened with a genuine smile upon seeing me, a warmth rarely found in this house. "There's my beautiful girl," she greeted warmly, wrapping me in her arms. The familiar aroma of freshly baked cookies and her signature lavender soap enveloped me. As she released me, her eyes scanned over me, sparkling. "A high school graduate already? What's next, sweetheart?" We moved to the living room where Mom had arranged the furniture as though it were a home decor magazine spread. Sitting beside Grandma on the sofa, I felt my parents' nervous gazes from the edge of their seats. Well, I began, trying not to meet Mom's intense gaze. I've actually been accepted into several colleges, 2 offering spots. That's wonderful. Grandma squeezed my hand. Tell me more about them. The state university offered a full scholarship, I replied, noticing my parents' approving nods. And then there's Brickworth College. I hesitated. My parents considered this out of reach due to its $30,000 a year tuition. Grandma nodded thoughtfully, her lips hinting a smile, her expression suggesting she already had a plan in mind. The doorbell rang as guests started to arrive. First Aunt Rebecca with Uncle Timothy, then cousins, followed by family friends. Mom flitted about as the perfect hostess, while Dad tended to grilling. But someone was absent, Mark. I'd called him 4 times. Each went directly to voicemail. When I asked Mom about him, she mentioned his preoccupation with the auto parts business, assuring me he'd congratulate me later. By mid-afternoon, the party was lively, the backyard resonating with relatives' chatter amidst the savory scents of grilled food. Yet something felt awry. My parents hovered anxiously around Grandma Margaret, ensuring her glass never ran dry and her plate remained full, seemingly desperate to please. I'd just finished my birthday cake when Grandma rose and tapped her fork on her glass. The room fell silent as everyone turned their attention towards her. I'd like to say something, she declared firmly. Today, we celebrate not only Susan's 19th birthday, but also her college acceptance. She beamed warmly at me. Susan, dear, having watched you grow, you're an incredible young woman. Unlike others, she paused, you've always toiled diligently, never taking anything for granted. My parents shifted uncomfortably. I could see Mom nervously shredding a napkin. When you told me about being accepted to Brickworth College, Grandma continued, I saw how much you wanted it despite thinking it was beyond reach. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. That's why I've decided to give you a special gift, she announced, handing me the envelope. My hands trembled as inside the envelope was a check, and when I saw the amount, I thought my eyes must be deceiving me. I blinked and checked again, $150,000. Grandma grinned at the astonished crowd and said, That's enough to cover your tuition at Brickworth College. Everything was still for a moment, then pandemonium erupted. Aunt Rebecca gasped so loudly it could have vacuumed the air from the backyard. Uncle Timothy began clapping, and soon everyone joined in. My cousins were cheering and shouting, while I simply sat there, staring at the check, tears streaming down my face. This wasn't just money. It was freedom, an opportunity to attend my dream school without accruing debt. Grandma, I choked, standing up to embrace her. I can't believe this. Thank you so much. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed my parents weren't applauding. Mom looked pale, and Dad seemed like he had just received a harsh blow. They whispered to each other, glancing suspiciously at the check in my hand. I spent the rest of the evening with Grandma, who shared stories of her college days and gave me advice on living on campus for the first time. Finally, someone in my family was genuinely excited about my future. As the sun set, guests started to leave, and the yard was littered with empty plates and half-finished drinks. Grandma decided to stay the night, saying she was too tired to drive home. I helped her settle into the guest room, grateful for a little more time with her. The following morning, after breakfast, Grandma hugged me tightly, promising to call soon to help me plan for college. I watched her car fade down the street, still scarcely believing what had unfolded. That evening, Mark arrived without knocking, looking like he had been sucking on lemons. His expensive designer clothes were wrinkled, and dark circles under his eyes betrayed his fatigue. "Happy birthday, sis," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. No hug, no card, not even a small gift. He bypassed me and headed straight to the kitchen, where our parents were, leaving me standing alone in the hallway. Dinner that night was unbearably tense. The air was thick enough to slice through. Mark lounged across from me, engrossed in his phone. Dad cleared his throat several times before finally speaking. "Susan, honey, we need to have a serious family talk," he said, setting his fork down. He glanced at Mark and continued, "Your brother has been having a tough time. His auto parts business isn't going as planned. Mark finally looked up from his phone, his face weary and pale. "The banks are all over me," he muttered. "I took out loans to expand, but the market crashed, and now they want their money back." I let out a short laugh. "Really? Because your Instagram shows you in Lahaina last month with different girls in every photo." Mark's face flushed. "Stay out of my social media," he snapped. "It's none of your business." "Calm down, both of you," Dad interrupted. "Susan, this is serious. Your brother could lose everything." I pushed my plate away, losing my appetite. "What does this have to do with me?" I asked. Mom and Dad exchanged a knowing look, clearly having planned this conversation. "Well, sweetheart," Mom said in her sweetest voice, "family always helps family. That's what we've always taught you, right?" A cold sense of dread washed over me as I suddenly understood their intention. "We think," Dad continued, "that the money Grandma gave you could really help Mark out of this situation." I stared at them in disbelief. "You want me to give Mark my college money?" "It makes perfect sense," Mark chimed in, suddenly animated. "My business is already set up. It's more important than some college degree you might never use." "That money is for my education," I retorted, my voice rising. "Grandma gave it to me for brickworth." "You got a full ride to state," Mom argued. "You can still go to college, but Mark needs this money now." "No," I said firmly, the word echoing in the room. "That money is mine. Grandma gave it to me." Their expressions changed immediately. Dad shot up from his chair, his hand tightening around my wrist like a vice. "You go to your room right now," he snarled, dragging me away from the table. I cried out in pain, but he ignored me. "And you'll stay there until you come to your senses. Don't even think about calling your grandmother. If you tell her anything, you're out of this house forever. Do you understand?" That night, as I lay in bed, the house settling around me, my wrist ached from where Dad had grabbed me. Around midnight, I could hear my parents and Mark arguing downstairs. Their voices were low and tense, though I couldn't make out their words. Eventually, the house fell silent. By 6 a.m., I had made up my mind. I retrieved my backpack from under the bed and began packing essentials: birth certificate, social security card, high school diploma, my laptop, some clothes, and toiletries. I checked my wallet and found I had around $500 saved from my part-time job at the library. Grandma's check was hidden in a book on my nightstand, and I added it to my documents carefully, ensuring everything important was secured. Moving quietly like a ghost, I slipped downstairs, avoiding the third step that always creaked. The house was quiet except for Dad's loud snoring from the master bedroom. In the living room, I grabbed my phone charger, and in the kitchen, I took a few granola bars. As I exited through the back door, the morning air was cool. I didn't look back. At the train station, my phone buzzed with Mom's name flashing on the screen. I declined the call. Mark called next, then Dad, but I declined all. Messages poured in. "Where are you?"
"Come home now."
"You're being irrational. Think about your brother. If you don't return immediately, you'll regret it." I turned off notifications and purchased a train ticket to New York. With an hour until the train's departure, I sat in the station cafe, clutching my backpack tightly. Every sudden sound startled me. By late afternoon, I arrived at Grandma Margaret's house. She opened the door, eyes wide in surprise. "Susan, what on earth?" She pulled me inside. "Your father called me this morning," she said, closing the door. "He said you ran off with some boy and planned to squander your college savings on partying." "That's a lie," I exclaimed, taking a shaky breath. "They tried to make me give the money to Mark," I said. "His business is failing and they wanted my college fund." When I refused, Dad locked me in my room and threatened me. I touched my wrist, where bruises were forming. Grandma's expression shifted from concern to fury. She wordlessly dialed Dad's number and put it on speaker. "Kevin," she said sharply, "Susan's here." "Thank God," came Dad's crackle response through the speaker. "Mom, she's making up stories, acting out." Grandma interrupted icily. "She told me everything about Mark's failing business, about you trying to take her college fund and threatening her." "She's lying," chipped in Mom. She's just being dramatic. Enough. Grandma's voice was glacial. For years I've watched you favor Mark, spoil him while ignoring Susan, and I've supported you financially, hoping you'd change. But no more. Consider my financial support ended, and tomorrow, my lawyer will update my will. You and Mark won't get a cent. She ended the call. Turning to me, her face softened. You'll stay here until college begins, she assured, and don't worry about anything. Living with Grandma Margaret was a new experience. Every morning, I woke to fresh coffee and whatever she was baking. Her apple pie was legendary, but her blueberry muffins were equally delightful. I helped around the house with chores not because she asked, but because I wanted to contribute. We fell into a simple rhythm, sharing meals, watching old movies, and chatting about everything and nothing. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Mom, Dad, and Mark tried every method: calls, texts, Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. Their messages varied from guilt-tripping to angry manipulations. I ignored them all. Summer passed quietly until August arrived, signaling the start of my college journey at Brickworth. Grandma helped me move into the dorm, making my bed with fresh sheets and neatly arranging my things. My roommate Emma seemed nice, and for the first time, I felt excited about what lay ahead. The first month of college was a whirlwind. Classes were challenging but engaging. I made friends and even joined a club for the first time. Writing for the campus newspaper, I stepped out of Mark's shadow and became simply Susan, carving my own path. Then one Friday, a sudden knock disrupted my thoughts. It was my resident advisor announcing, "Susan, your parents are here. They're waiting at the campus coffee shop." My stomach churned. Something I'd anticipated unfolding eventually. Seated at a secluded table, they appeared changed, weary and dispirited. "Susan," Mom uttered, reaching across the table, but I kept my hands stone still on my lap. "You look well. What brings you here?" I queried, cutting to the chase. Dad shifted awkwardly, confessing, "We want to apologize. We were wrong, trying to seize your college fund, threatening you. We've erred in many ways." I held my silence, knowing their conversations were never straightforward. With a cough, Dad continued, "We wondered if you'd speak to your grandmother about her will. We're not after your money anymore." "No," I responded, my tone definitive. "If you want to reconcile with Grandma, do it yourselves. Stay me out of it." Their frustrated exchange followed. "Be reasonable, Susan," Dad implored. I asserted. "I'm prioritizing myself for once. Fixing things with Grandma is up to you, not me." Mom's expression hardened. "So that's it? You won't assist your family at all?" I stood, gathering my belongings. "You know what's ironic?" I declared. "When you needed my money, it was all about family helping family. But you never assisted me. It only works one way, doesn't it?" A call from Aunt Rebecca came at an unexpected hour. Initially, I hesitated to pick up, given her alignment with Mom, but curiosity won out. "Susan, are you sitting?" Her tone was secretive. "I thought you should know what's unfolding at home. Mark's business has collapsed. He owes substantial sums to the banks. He's moved in with your parents." I let that sink in. Mark, who always scoffed at my college ambitions, was back in his childhood room. "Your parents," Aunt Rebecca went on, "they're using their retirement savings to support him, even contemplating refinancing the house." Shortly after, Grandma called. "I had visitors today," she announced tiredly. "Your parents were here, pleading for help with Mark's debts. They're on the brink of losing everything." I refused, told them to face their fallout. "How did they react?" I inquired. "As you'd imagine," she exhaled. "Your mother was in tears, your father was incensed, but I remained firm. I told them their predicament was the outcome of years spent indulging Mark while neglecting you." As the semester progressed, more family gossip trickled my way. Dad acquired a second job, Mom began selling her jewelry, and Mark, astonishingly, had acquired a new iPhone while living frugally at home again. During fall break, I stayed with Grandma. We bonded over pie baking and she aided my term paper research. She even prepared a full guest suite for me, equipped with study essentials. "Your grades are here," she beamed one evening, "straight A's." I'm very proud. Thanks, Grandma. I paused. Do you ever regret cutting them off? Abandoning her knitting, she addressed me earnestly, not in the slightest, adding, sometimes, aiding people means letting them face their repercussions. She was undeniably correct. Occasionally, guilt tugged at me when I heard about my family's financial struggles, but memories of favoritism snapped me back. All those Christmases receiving only a card while Mark got grand gifts, every time they overlooked my achievements to laud his minor successes. I thrived at Brickworth, forging friendships, advancing academically, crafting the future I envisioned. Meanwhile, my parents grappled with the chaos they'd cultivated. It was never my obligation to mend their wrongs. Last whispers about Mark involved another new business idea, and my parents still scrambling for financing. Old habits persist, it seems. Yet, I had liberated myself, thanks to Grandma's generosity and her unwavering faith in me.